Linda arrived in Lagos on a sunny Saturday afternoon, her suitcase rolling behind her as she walked into her sister's compound. Her elder sister, Grace, had recently given birth to her second child, a beautiful baby girl, and Linda had offered to spend a few weeks helping her out since their mother was not feeling well. If only Grace knew the intention behind her visits. Linda! Grace exclaimed as she opened the door, a tired but joyful smile on her face. She hugged her younger sister tightly. It's so good to see you. You look amazing for someone who just had a baby, Linda said, her voice warm but her eyes scanning the hallway behind Grace. Grace laughed. Don't be fooled though. I am barely holding it together. She turned to call her husband. Honey, come and see who is here. My sister Grace. Michael, Grace's husband, came out of the bedroom carrying their 2-year-old son in his arms. Michael was tall, good-looking, and he looked really calm. He greeted Linda with a smile that made her heart skip a beat. Welcome, Linda. It's nice to have you here, he said. Linda smiled back. It's nice to be here, Michael. Linda had always liked Michael. She liked him from the very first day that Grace introduced him to the family. As the days turned into weeks, Linda blended seamlessly into Grace and Michael's home. She helped Grace with the baby, played with her nephew, and made herself indispensable. But beneath her helpful exterior, Linda couldn't ignore the growing attraction she had for her sister's husband, Michael. It started with fleeting glances. Linda noticed the way Michael carried himself, the way he laughed, the way he treated Grace with such tenderness. She began to wonder what it would be like to be the center of his attention. One evening, Grace went to bed early, exhausted from tending to the baby. Linda and Michael were left alone in the living room. The low volume of the television filled the silence. You are an amazing father, Michael, Linda said, breaking the silence. Michael glanced at her, surprised by the compliment. Thank you, but Grace does most of the work. I am just trying to keep up. Linda smiled, leaning slightly towards him. She's lucky to have you, you know. Michael looked away, the jaw tightening slightly. We are all lucky to have each other. From that night, the tension between them grew. Linda started wearing more revealing outfits around the house, her movements deliberate and calculated. She found excuses to be close to Michael, brushing past him in the kitchen, sitting a little too close during family dinners. Michael tried to resist, but Linda's charm was overpowering. One evening, while Grace was upstairs with the children, Linda cornered Michael into the kitchen. You've been avoiding me, she said, her eyes looking into his. Michael hesitated. Linda, we can't. Can't what? She interrupted, stepping closer. Can you deny the attraction between us? Before he could respond, Linda kissed him. It was soft at first, but when Michael didn't pull away, it deepened. The kiss was the beginning of their secret affair. Over the following weeks, Linda and Michael found ways to steal moments together. Late night rendezvous in the living room, hushed whispers when Grace wasn't looking, and secretive touches that left them both yearning for more. But secrets are hard to keep, especially in a house where Grace also lived. Grace started noticing changes in her husband. His distracted demeanor, the way he avoided eye contact when Linda was around. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but she dismissed it. And she said to herself, Oh, Grace, you are beginning to overthink things. Besides, Michael is your husband and he is faithful to you and he loves you. Why will I be thinking of such a thing? And besides, Linda is also my sister. So I don't think they will ever have anything to do with each other. And she shook it off. Oh, if only Grace knew what was already happening in her matrimonial home. Meanwhile, Linda, on the other hand, enjoyed the thrill of their affair. She believed that she could have it all her sister's love and Michael's attention without consequence. But one can't eat his or her cake and have it, right? One afternoon, while Grace was out running errands, Linda and Michael sat in the living room. We can't continue doing this, Michael said. Linda leaned closer, her fingers tracing patterns on his arms. You say that, but you don't mean it. But you are happier with me than you've ever been. I am more better than my sister. You can never get the kind of things I will give to you. Even my sister can never give it to you, Michael. Michael sighed, conflicted but unable to deny the truth in her words. As they continued their affair, Grace's suspicions grew, and Linda's desire to have Michael all to herself intensified. The affair between Linda and Michael deepened with each passing day. They grew bolder, finding new ways to satisfy their selfish desires while keeping their secrets from Grace. Linda loved everything that was happening. Michael's longing glances, his apologies before giving in to their desires, and the intoxicating feeling of being the center of his world, even if it was in secrets. Grace, who was unaware of what was going on in her home, was often preoccupied with caring for the children. She had complete trust in both her husband and her sister, never suspecting the storm brewing under her roof. She didn't even care that Linda, who had come to help her, was no longer doing anything in the house. One morning, Linda woke up feeling unusually nauseous. At first, she dismissed it as a mild illness, but when the symptoms persisted for days, she decided to visit a clinic. Sitting in the clinic's waiting room, she tried to claim her racing thoughts until the doctor called her to his office. The doctor's words were both a shock and a thrill. Congratulations, you are pregnant. Linda stared at the doctor in disbelief. Her mind immediately went to Michael. This wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a ticking time bomb. That evening, Linda waited for Michael to return from work. Grace had gone to bed early, exhausted after a long day with the kids. Linda intercepted Michael in the kitchen, her expression serious. We need to talk, she whispered. Michael frowned, sensing the urgency in her tone. What is it, Linda? I'm pregnant, oh, Linda said, watching his face carefully. The color drained from Michael's face. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. This is your child, Michael, Linda added, her voice firm. I'm not asking for much. I just want you to do the right thing. Michael stepped back, running a hand through his hair. Linda, this wasn't supposed to happen. Well, it has, oh, Linda said, her frustration bubbling to the surface. You need to take responsibility. I can't raise this child alone, and I won't hide forever. Michael glanced towards the staircase, as though expecting Grace to appear at any moment. You know I can't tell Grace. This will destroy her. You are her sister, for Christ's sake, Linda. Linda's voice softened. Then marry me. Make me your second wife. We can make this work. Michael, Grace doesn't have to know. We can get married secretly, then you get me an apartment. Michael's eyes widened in horror. Are you out of your mind? That's not possible. This is Nigeria, Linda. Do you know what people will say? What Grace will do if she finds out? Linda folded her arms, her voice icy. Then you better figure out something, Michael, because I'm not going anywhere. Neither is this child. From that night, Michael became a shadow of himself. He was constantly distracted, barely able to behold a conversation with Grace. At night, he tossed and turned in bed, his guilt and fear eating him up. Are you okay, Michael? Grace asked him one night as they lay in bed. He forced a smile. I'm fine, just work stress. Grace nodded, accepting his answer. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. Meanwhile, Linda grew impatient. She began pressing Michael for answers concerning her pregnancy whenever they were alone. You need to decide, Michael. Am I your future or am I just your secrets? Michael avoided her as much as he could, but it was impossible to ignore the situation. His world was crumbling, and he had no idea how to put it back together. Linda believed that she had secured her place in Michael's life because of her pregnancy. She began to act more boldly. She would make sly comments in front of Grace, testing her sister's patience. One evening, as Grace prepared dinner, Linda sat at the dining table, watching Michael intently. "You're such a good man, Michael, always taking care of everyone." Michael stiffened, glancing nervously at Grace, who was too busy chopping off vegetables to notice. Linda smirked, enjoying his discomfort. She knew she held the upper hand now. Michael's behavior didn't go unnoticed. Grace began to sense that something was deeply troubling her husband. "You've been so distant lately," she said one night, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Is there something you are not telling me?" Michael shook his head, avoiding her gaze. "I'm just tired from work, Grace." Grace wasn't convinced as usual, but there was nothing she could do. Michael did everything he could to avoid Linda's growing demands. He avoided being alone with her, refused to answer her late-night calls, and begged her repeatedly to keep the pregnancy a secret or get rid of it. But Linda didn't want to hear a word of that. She was growing impatient. She was tired of sneaking around and living in the shadows. One fateful evening after dinner, Grace was in the living room feeding the baby, while Michael and Linda were at the dining table. Linda, unable to control her frustration any longer, decided it was time to force Michael to accept her and her baby. "Michael," she said loudly, her voice cutting through the quiet evening. "We need to tell Grace. She deserves to know the truth." Michael's head snapped up, panic flashing in his eyes. "Linda, stop," he hissed, glancing nervously at Grace, who had paused and was now looking at them curiously. "Tell me what?" Grace asked, her voice calm but laced with suspicion. Linda stood up, crossing her arms over her chest. "Grace, I've been quiet for too long, but I can't take it anymore. I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like a bombshell. Grace's brow furrowed in confusion. "Pregnant? What does that have to do with Michael?" Linda's voice was steady as she dropped the final blow. "The baby is Michael's." For a moment, it seemed like time stood still. Grace blinked, her mind struggling to process what she had just heard. She looked at Michael, who was now pale and trembling. "Michael," her voice was barely above a whisper. "Is this true?" "Grace, I can explain," Michael stammered, and his voice cracking. But Grace didn't wait to hear his explanation. Her breathing quickened, and her vision blurred. Clutching her chest, she gasped, "No, no, 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 this can't be happening." Before anyone could react, Grace collapsed to the floor. "Grace!" Michael shouted, rushing to her side. Linda stood frozen, shock written all over her face. She had not expected things to escalate this quickly. Michael carried Grace to the car and sped to the nearest hospital, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. At the hospital, the doctors quickly admitted her and Michael sat in the waiting room. Linda arrived shortly after, her face pale with worry. "How is she?" she asked. Michael glared at her, his voice cold. "Why did you do this? I told you not to say anything." "She deserved to know," Linda fired back. "You've been playing me for a fool, Michael. I'm carrying your child and you act like I'm nothing to you." Michael stood up, his fists clenched. "Do you know what you've done? Grace might never forgive me. You've destroyed everything, Linda." Before Linda could respond, a doctor approached. "Mr. Michael." Michael rushed towards the doctor. "How is she?" "She's stable for now, but the shock caused a significant spike in her blood pressure. She needs rest and should avoid stress." Michael nodded, his heart heavy with guilt. When Grace woke up, her eyes were red and swollen. She turned her head and saw Michael sitting beside her bed. His face lit up when he saw her awake, but his relief was short lived when Grace spoke. "Don't say anything," she said, her voice hoarse. "I don't want to hear your lies." "Grace, please," Michael begged, his eyes filled with tears. "I know I made a mistake. Please forgive me, my darling wife." "Mistake?" Grace's voice rose despite her weakness. "You betrayed me with my own sister. How could you do this to me, Michael? How?" Michael hung his head in shame, unable to meet her gaze. The door opened and Linda walked in hesitantly. "Grace," she began. But Grace's sharp glare stopped her in her tracks. "Don't you dare come near me," Grace spat. "You've destroyed my home, my marriage. You were supposed to be my sister." Linda bit her lip, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Grace. I didn't mean for it to happen this way." Grace shook her head, her voice trembling. "You didn't mean for it to happen? You slept with my husband, Linda. You are carrying his child. How do you expect me to forgive that?" Linda took a step back, guilt washing over her. "I love him, Grace," she said. Grace let out a bitter laugh, her tears flowing freely. "You love him? What about me? What about my children? Did you think about anyone else while you were destroying my life?" The room felt silent, the weight of Grace's words hanging heavy in the air. Back at home, Michael found himself caught between two women. Grace refused to speak to him, and Linda's constant demands for marriage only added to his torments. "Michael, you can't keep running from this," Linda said one evening. "I'm pregnant with your child. You have to take responsibility. You're beginning to waste too much time." "I've already destroyed my family, Linda. How can I marry you and make things worse?" Michael said. "So you are choosing Grace over me?" Linda asked, her voice cold. "I'm not choosing anyone," Michael shouted. "I don't know what to do anymore." Meanwhile, Grace sat in her room staring at her family photo. Her heart ached as she thought about the life she had built, and in the betrayal she never saw coming. She knew she had to make a choice, either fight for her marriage or walk away. My dear viewers, if you were in Grace's situation, what would you do? Would you fight for your marriage or walk away? The tension in the house grew unbearable after Grace returned from the hospital. Every glance between the three was laced with resentment, guilt, and unspoken words. Grace could barely look at Michael without feeling a wave of betrayal, and Linda, feeling on top of the world because of her pregnancy, refused to act remorseful. One morning, Grace finally confronted Linda in the living room. "You have to leave my house, Linda. You have overstayed your welcome." Linda, who was sitting on the couch, smirked. "Leave? Leave to where? This is Michael's house too, and he hasn't asked me to leave, so you have no right to send me out of the house, Grace." Grace's jaw tightened, her voice shaking with anger. "This is my home, my children's home. You have no right to be here after what you've done." Linda stood up, her hands on her hips. "And where am I supposed to go to? I'm carrying Michael's child too. You can't just kick me out." Michael, hearing the raised voices, rushed into the room. "What's going on here?" he asked, even though he already knew. "She needs to leave, Michael," Grace shouted, pointing at Linda. "I won't share my home with her." Michael hesitated, his eyes darting between the two women. "Grace, calm down. Let's talk about this." "There is nothing to talk about," Grace interrupted, her voice breaking. "She betrayed me, Michael, and so did you. I can't live like this." Linda crossed her arms, her expression smug. "If anyone should leave, Grace, it's you. I'm the one carrying his child now." Grace stared at Linda in disbelief. "You are shameless," she said, her voice trembling with rage. For days, the house was filled with constant arguments. Grace refused to eat or speak to Michael, and Linda continued to provoke her at every given opportunity. One evening, As Grace sat at her children's room watching her son and baby daughter sleeping, she realized she couldn't take it anymore. The home she had built for years had become a battlefield, and Michael's indecisiveness only added to her pain. The next morning, Grace packed her belongings. She carried her children and stood in the living room facing Michael and Linda. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Michael stood up alarmed. "Grace, you don't have to do this." "I do," Grace replied, looking at him with a mixture of pain and sorrow. "You made your choice when you let her stay. I can't fight for someone who won't even fight for me. You are my husband, and I don't expect this from you." She turned up to Linda, her eyes blazing. "You have taken my husband, but you will never have my dignity. I hope you are happy with the life you have destroyed." Linda said nothing, but the satisfaction on her face was evident.